You're listening to the Cash Podcast, creating affluence, success, and happiness with your financial surgeon, Adam Koos, President and Portfolio Manager at Libertas Wealth Management Group at LibertasWealth.com.
All right, everyone. More than 40 million people have lost their jobs in the U.S. this past 10 weeks. And in Ohio, almost 20% of the labor force is collecting unemployment, and that number is obviously rising. So today, we're going to be talking about what to do if you've been laid off or furloughed as a result of the coronavirus. But before we get started, as always, a few housekeeping items. If this is your first time listening or watching, then thanks for joining us. The Cash Podcast is produced weekly, and as stated in the intro, CASH stands for creating affluence, success, and happiness, and that's our mission. My hope is for you to learn a little bit more on each and every episode so that you become more successful, wealthier, happier, and more educated than you were before you started listening today. So come back often. Feel free to subscribe on iTunes and YouTube. In addition, you can follow me on Twitter at Adam Koos and on Instagram at Financial Surgeon. Last but not least, all links, visuals, charts, and other educational resources are available on our website at LibertasWealth.com. So that's it with the formalities. Let's go ahead and get started. As mentioned in the intro, it goes without saying again that a lot of people have already been laid off at this point, with millions more who are probably worried about losing their job in the coming weeks and months. Again, as of this past week, the job losses have totaled over 40 million. And again, almost 20% of the labor force here in Ohio are already collecting unemployment benefits. And those numbers are starting to rival that of the Great Depression. So what should you do? What steps should you take if you've been laid off, or if you think you might be facing a potential layoff in the not too distant future? So let's just kind of go into a checklist here. So first off, if you're worried about losing your job and you haven't already done so, hopefully you've already saved an emergency account. But if not, you want to see if you have access to any tax-free, penalty-free money that can be used in the case of emergency. Things like CDs, so certificates of deposit, home equity lines of credit would be an option. The CARES Act, which was just recently signed, allows you to borrow up to 100% or $100,000, whichever is less, of your vested balance in your 401k plan. Your existing 401k loan, if you already have one, it can be delayed. Payments can be delayed for up to a year. And then I don't want to say last case scenario, but kind of a last case scenario would be 401k IRA distributions, meaning taking money out of the 401k, or if you have IRAs and you want to take a premature withdrawal, the 10% penalty that you would normally have to pay to the IRS has been waived. And taxes, you still got to pay the taxes, of course, but those taxes that you would normally owe in 1 year are now payable over 3 years instead, as a result, again, of the CARES Act. You want to try and, again, keep your expenses as low as possible, especially, regardless of whether you have an emergency account or not. Review your budget. Try to avoid expenses that you don't need. Do the whole exercise to make a T-chart, wants versus needs. Starbucks, going to Starbucks to get coffee versus, making your own coffee. And nothing against Starbucks here, but do you really need cable TV, satellite TV, or streaming video? Or maybe you have both and maybe you don't need both. What other subscriptions do you have that you don't necessarily need right now that can help you save money and kind of tighten that budget, tighten those purse strings between now and when you find that new job? Even if you're one of the many who have been furloughed and not necessarily laid off, positions could still be eliminated as the aftershock of the coronavirus hits businesses, nonprofits, and this could very well trickle down into the public sector as well. Was just talking on the phone to somebody who was a professor at Ohio State University, and they're worried that because of international students not coming back to school this next year, a lot of people have been transferring as a result of not being able to go to school. They're worried about workforces being cut at universities as well. So even if there's a 99% probability that you get rehired, even if you've been told that, stay ahead of traffic. I have a client who once said to me, he had a great job, executive at a very prominent company here in Columbus, and all of a sudden one day he decided, he came in the office, he said he got a new job. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I thought you said you liked your job. And he says, no, I did. I loved my job. But you know what? You always stay ahead of traffic. You don't want to let people pass you up. You always want to be staying ahead of traffic and being one step ahead and looking for that next best thing. And I think that's probably a good lesson in any time, but especially during the times that we're living in today. But that being said, by staying ahead of traffic, you could, even if you've been furloughed and even if you think you're going to be hired back, you could end up finding the next big career move of your dreams, let's just say. But you will never know if you don't look, right? So keep that in mind. Now, next step, when you've been laid off or you know you're getting laid off, you're about to get your last paycheck. Find out if you're going to get paid for any unused vacation time. This happens a lot, so ask your HR department about that. Any final matches or non-elective contributions on employer-sponsored retirement plans like 401ks, cash balance plans, any kind of executive benefit plans, things of that nature. Talk to HR about whether your health insurance can be continued. While it probably cannot, there are some certain circumstances where, as part of a severance, you might be able to keep your health insurance. COBRA, you get 18 months. Obviously, you got to pay 100% of it. Your employer is not paying for any of it anymore. But with COBRA, it's at least you get to keep your health insurance for the next 18 months. Now, it might be cheaper, by the way, instead of taking COBRA, to get a government-sponsored healthcare plan, or even a high deductible private plan, something more catastrophic. Look for something with like a $12,000 deductible, which might sound crazy, but stay healthy, stay safe, and try not to get yourself into trouble into something that might get you hurt, obviously. But better to have insurance than none at all, of course. You want to file for unemployment as soon as you know your last paycheck's hit. You don't want to wait. Again, severance I mentioned, it could be healthcare, it could be monthly income. If you get a severance package and it's a lump sum, just be really, really careful. I think it's really easy to see a big lump sum of money coming into your checking account or savings account, and I think it's really easy to say, oh, I've got this money, I'll be okay. And without a budget, without a plan, you can burn through that money pretty quickly. And then last, as part of the step of looking at your last paycheck, when you're talking to HR, ask about your stock options if you have any. Find out how long you have to exercise them. You still, if you own stock options and you've been laid off or you're going to be laid off, there might be strike prices on some of these options that are lower than the current market value today of the stock, which would give you obviously a benefit in that case. Next, even if your employer, your place of employment has been temporarily closed, file for unemployment anyway. Some states allow for temporary closings to file for short-term unemployment. If you're quarantined due to coronavirus for whatever reason, but intend to come back to work, file for unemployment. If you're deemed a high risk of infection, so you're forced to go home, let's just say, or take care of someone else, file for unemployment. And anything's worth trying, I guess. Even if they say no, the worst they can say is no. Let's see here. Who's eligible for unemployment? So one of the things that changed as a result of the CARES Act is that unemployment has now been expanded to part-time employees, freelancers, independent contractors, gig workers, have a side gig, as well as the self-employed. So it adds an additional $600 per week on top of the normal unemployment benefits, and this is extended through July 31st, so something to keep in mind as well. And then your first check, just so you know, when you do file for unemployment, your first check will show up usually about 2 to 3 weeks after you filed. However, if you are wondering if you should do direct deposit, I would highly recommend it. Direct deposit's a whole lot faster. You get your money faster because with so many people filing for unemployment these days, there's going to be delays. It's just natural to expect that. All right, next step. You want to deal with your expenses. So you've got all your final paycheck, your healthcare benefits, retirement benefits. You've kind of looked at those things. Now we got to look at our expenses. So call your mortgage company. Ask if there's a deferral program in place where you can defer payments to a later date and see what they have. They might have nothing, but there's several companies that are offering programs. Same thing with utilities companies, so gas, electric. Let them know you've been laid off and see if there's any benefits that they'll offer for, I don't want to say forgiveness because that's highly doubtful, but some sort of delay or deferral in payments. There are some banks that have been waiving monthly fees, or if you have a CD at the bank that has not matured yet, and normally you would have to pay a penalty to take that CD out. A lot of banks have been waiving the penalty on CDs being prematurely withdrawn that would normally be charged if you took it out early. Next, and this is kind of off the rails here. This isn't financial, but just taking a break from the money stuff. Manage your stress. It goes without saying that if you think you're going to get laid off or if you've been laid off, it's usually unexpected, not always, but even if it isn't, I mean, it is a stressful anxiety-provoking, panic-stricken, worrisome time, right? I mean, I'm not saying anything that anybody doesn't know. However, I think it's important to go to your support group, whether that's your family, friends, share what's going on with them. You don't have to share everything, but be open. You're going to need support. You're going to need encouragement. Don't be ashamed. Don't feel ashamed and hide this from your spouse or your kids. It's not your fault. It's obviously we're living in a pandemic that there is nobody alive right now that I'm aware of who has lived through something like this. So this is not your fault. It's not like you underperformed and someone fired you. This is a different time. And then when it happens, give yourself some time initially. During each day, after you've kind of gone through this process, give yourself some time to wind down, read a book that you've always wanted to do, relax, make plenty of me time, exercise, do push-ups, sit-ups, air squats while you're watching TV, anything to kind of get the blood pumping. Maybe rediscover some passions that you've had but never had time for because you've been so busy with work, ironically enough. Me, I love producing music, and I haven't created a song in literally years. Now, I don't know when I'll have time for that, but find whatever that passion is, or find a new passion for that matter. So moving on here, changing gears, a subject that many probably don't think of is if you're old enough and if you've saved enough, maybe you can retire early. Maybe you don't have to find a new job. Again, most wouldn't think about this, but if you're close, it might be possible. Now, how do you find out? Obviously, you need a comprehensive financial plan. You can't just retire and hope you have enough, right? That's not a strategy. Hope is not a strategy. So what you would want to do is find a company, a professional, registered investment advisory firm, financial planning company, ideally one that's a fiduciary, and hire them to put together a full-blown comprehensive financial plan, which will take your fixed expenses, variable expenses, any one-time expenses for things like cars, vacations, maybe you want to downsize to a new home someday. And it puts this all into a comprehensive plan, and then we can tell, based on your life expectancy, based on your income sources like Social Security, pensions if there are any, and your expenses, variable and fixed, we can see pretty conservatively if you're able to retire on time or not. And if you can retire, right now, even though you've been laid off or you're going to be laid off, and we can do so conservatively, maybe there isn't all that much to worry about. Now, this might not be you, but if it is, I think it's something that you want to have on the table as an option. Now, what's next? So let's just say you've gone through this process, you're kind of moving forward, looking forward into the next big thing. So what's next from a job standpoint? I think you want to make a T-chart, and you want to say, looking at your last job that you had, what did you like about it? What did you love about it? And then what didn't you like so much, or what did you hate about it? What do you absolutely not want to have in your next job? And then what maybe on the left side of that T-chart for things that you did like or did love about your prior job, maybe you want to put down the things that you really want to have in your next job. And that can kind of give you some good guidance in terms of looking for whatever it is you want next. Go back to your prior employer and ask for your performance reviews, your written performance reviews if you didn't save them. While you're at it, ask that employer if they'll do recommendation letters, if they'll write a recommendation letter for you, which will be helpful later on, and then save those, of course. Ask your prior supervisors right now if they will act as references for you so you can have that information. I think next you want to go online, you want to update your resume. If you're not a good writer, or if it's not really your thing, writing resumes, and you're concerned about not doing it professionally, there are tons of templates online. Some of them are free. Microsoft Office, I know Microsoft Word online has a ton of templates, and you can use those. There's also people you can pay to help you do this. You want to write a cover letter. Hands down, do not apply for a job without a cover letter, and make it customized. You don't want to take a shotgun approach and just start shooting resumes to everybody who happens to be hiring. I don't think you're going to stand out. Next, what you want to do is get on LinkedIn after you've updated your profile and start networking. Start asking people you know on LinkedIn. Well, obviously connect with everyone you know on LinkedIn first and foremost, but start asking them for introductions to people who you might want to know that can connect you to people who would be hiring. And just remember, if you can't get a yes, in other words, if nobody's going to say, yes, sure, I'll introduce you, if you don't ask. And every no that you get, if by some chance, people want to help, of course, but in the case that they can't help, every no is one step closer to a yes. Consider recruiters. There's recruiters out there that can help. Temp agencies if need be. And then don't just apply online. Do more. If there's a position or a job or a company you want to work for, and you've gotten introductions and you found places that you want to work that you're really interested in, send a handwritten card once you send the cover letter saying, thank you for looking at my resume. Call and follow up. Shoot an email to them. I know we're living in a social distancing world right now, so things are a little tough. However, you can still write a handwritten card, which is kind of a lost art. You can email, you can call, you can talk to people. So I think that will help you set you apart from other people in the job force. And then I think the next step here is we want to bridge the gap. It might take a while to find a job. Let's be honest. I mean, these layoffs are not over yet. There's more to come. So I think you might need to think outside the box and have a really long-term mindset. And what I mean by that is considering swallowing our pride and doing something maybe outside of our skill set for the time being. Consider part-time work maybe. I know this might sound crazy for some people, but delivery drivers, warehouse workers, grocery stores. Amazon announced just recently, not too long ago, that they're hiring 100,000 workers. Walmart is hiring 150,000. Kroger in the next 3 months, I believe they said they're going to be hiring 300,000 people. So exceptional times call for exceptional measures, and I wouldn't worry about doing something maybe below your pay grade. I don't think it'll hurt your resume. I think instead it may help. It shows work ethic. It shows tenacity and assertiveness that you're not above doing something that maybe wasn't as nice as what you were doing before. And then longer term, focus on some of the jobs and industries out there that are in new demand. Information technology, so IT. You might not be educated in that area, but maybe there's something within your skill set that might bleed over. Sanitation, virtual operations, think Zoom, GoToMeeting, Teams at Microsoft, things like that. Google, obviously. Healthcare, so the industry, whole healthcare industry, medical supplies, pharmaceuticals, personal protective equipment obviously is huge. Make a list of companies that are hiring and try to match something that is in your past or your prior job with your skill set and this new position. And then last but not least, to tie this all together, once you've done all those things and you're working on getting your new position, and you've moved on to, say, the final step, which I would say is taking the time right now to get your financial house in order. Once you've taken care of everything else we've talked about today, don't procrastinate on your finances. So when not searching for a job, because you're probably not going to be searching 15, 16 hours a day, get your financial house in order. So do you think about it? Do you have a written comprehensive financial plan for people who are not retired yet? Obviously, do you have a plan that ensures that you can retire when you want to and take the vacations that you always dreamed you'd be able to take someday? Do you have a plan that makes sure your family's taken care of if you were to pass away prematurely? And don't say it can't happen to me. I know I've mentioned in prior letters, podcasts, that I lost my brother a few years ago, who was 13 months younger than me. And, anything can happen. I was talking to somebody yesterday on the phone whose sister passed away recently, 33 years old, and mother of 3, married, walking up the stairs, tripped, fell backwards, hit her head, and passed away. So don't say it can't happen to you. It can happen to anyone. You just have to be prepared. If you're retired or you're one of these people who are thinking about retiring, maybe early even, do you have a plan that says clearly a roadmap to ensure that you know where your income's going to come from? Do you have a income tax roadmap to make sure that you're managing your income as tax efficiently as possible, and that you'll conservatively never run out of money in retirement? Another thing to ask yourself right now during these times when maybe things are a little quieter and we're quarantined, or at least partially quarantined, do you have an estate plan in place? If you do, is it current and updated? For people who are already retired or in their 50s, are your kids in their 20s, and do they still have guardianship provisions on their estate plan? If you're younger, do you have guardianship provisions on your estate plan to ensure that your kids are taken care of if something, heaven forbid, were to happen to you? Do you have a will, financial power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney? Do you have a password organizer in the case that you were to die unexpectedly, so somebody could step in and pay your bills and take care of all the financial matters that you have? Do you know where your life insurance policies are? And would your executor or would your spouse know where they were so that they get access to them if something were to happen to you? Are you properly insured right now with good, low cost, and that's key, low cost insurance, life insurance, so that if the worst did happen to you, your family wouldn't find themselves in a nightmare? Maybe you're overly insured. That happens every once in a while. We find people who have too much insurance and they're just spending too much money on insurance they don't need. And in conclusion, I think there's a lot to think about. I'm going to wrap this up here, but I'm sure that while I covered a lot, there are probably more questions that will come up. So please feel free to call or email me with any personal questions you have, and I'd be happy to have a confidential discussion with you at my earliest opportunity. And if you'd like to schedule something on the calendar, please by all means reach out. On our website, there's actually a button you can click to set up an appointment if you'd like. But that'll do it for today. If you'd like to discuss your personal financial situation further, if you'd like a second opinion on your financial plan, retirement plan, estate plan, please let us know. Remember that you never ever have to be a client to ask a question. So please head over to our website to get more information or reach out to us privately and we'd be happy to help. But that's it for today's episode. And again, we realize that there are thousands of podcasts out there and you chose to listen to ours. So thank you so much for listening. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and YouTube. Please feel free to share this podcast with your friends. And if you want more educational information, you can sign up on our website at www.libertaswealth.com to receive our screencasts, videos, and articles that we send out on a regular basis. Again, you can also follow me on Twitter at Adam Koos and on Instagram at Financial Surgeon. So thank you so much again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Cash Podcast with your financial surgeon, Adam Koos. To see any charts or images that were mentioned in this show, or to check out additional articles, videos, and other educational resources, head over to libertaswealth.com.